Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Hello again. My name's Oliver and I'm a former addict in recovery. Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. The Recovery Cast is a podcast created by people in recovery from addiction for people in recovery from addiction. There are many different definitions of addiction, but we keep it simple. Addiction to us is when people use alcohol, drugs, or certain behaviours repetitively to their detriment. Basically, when it's a problem for them and their families. Therefore, an addict is not necessarily someone using a needle in a dark laneway, and an alcoholic is not necessarily a homeless man in a park. Recovery for us means using an active daily process or program to deal with alcohol use disorder, substance use disorder, or other behavioural addictions. People in recovery are committed to complete abstinence. This daily process is as important to being able to live normal lives as daily dialysis is for people with kidney problems. This podcast is meant as a support tool for those in recovery. I myself am a recovering drug addict. However, each day we will focus on a different perspective of recovery. Everyone who participates in the podcast is in an active recovery program. We are not affiliated with any one recovery methodology and will focus on a variety of different types of recovery, including 12-step recovery programs such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and other programs like Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, and more. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is intended to be informative. A podcast alone cannot support your sobriety and recovery, so we suggest it only as one component of a daily recovery routine. For more information on what recovery is, please go to www.rehab.melbourne. Now, we have an interesting episode planned for you today. I am joined by a recovery peer, friend, and also a staff member at Hills and Rangers Private, Kelly. Say hi, Kelly.
Hi, everyone.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Oliver.
No worries. Now, Kelly, we're going to do a reading, and today's reading is on November the 17th. It's from the Alcoholics Anonymous Daily Reflections reading book, and it is entitled Overcoming Loneliness. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly all of us suffered the feeling that we didn't quite belong. As Bill sees at page 90. The agonies and the void that I often felt inside occur less and less frequently in my life today. I have learned to cope with solitude. It is only when I am alone and calm that I am able to communicate with God, for He cannot reach me when I am in turmoil. It is good to maintain contact with God at all times, but it is absolutely essential that when everything seems to go wrong, I maintain that contact through prayer and meditation. That was actually a sneaky one, because I thought it was about overcoming loneliness, and then they slipped the God stuff in there as well, which is really funny. But I think we can probably talk about that overcoming loneliness that certainly for me, the agony and the void that I felt often when I was in active addiction, it occurs less and less because I'm connected with other people. Do you want to just talk about what your sort of experience was like with I guess they're talking about isolation and loneliness in active addiction versus today, Kel?
No worries. I remember in active addiction, I did isolate myself. I avoided going out. I'd go out to go get money out or to do food shopping, and that was it. I tried to avoid going out as much as I can, because it kept me away from being able to use whenever I wanted or I felt I needed to. So I remember still being up in the middle of the night, sitting outside and just missing people, wanting to talk to people, wanting to talk to friends and family, but being too ashamed to reach out to them because A, I was under the influence, and B, I didn't want them to ask what was going on or how I've been or anything like that, because I didn't want to lie to them. I found that I lied a lot to people to try and it's like a double-edged sword. I wanted that contact with people, but I wanted to hide away too because, I was ashamed of who I was and what I was becoming.
Totally.
So, yeah.
I can really identify with that. I mean, for me, in the reading it says that I think it said people cut us off. Yeah. Before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly all of us suffered the feeling that we don't quite belong. So I really, I did get cut off by a lot of people. And I also, because of my behavior, I was cut off, even though I still sometimes wanted to be, to have that connection. I still craved that connection, but at the same time, I think my addiction took me to a place where even though I wanted to connect with people and I felt lonely, the addiction just always came first and it won out every time. So my addiction took me to basically being alone all of the time. And when I wasn't alone, I was still thinking about how I wanted to sneak off and be alone. And so the point where even when I was with people, I would still be sneaking off every, little while to use or just to be alone. I just was so separated from the connection. And I felt like even though I was in a room full of people, I was still alone because I couldn't truly connect.
No, I felt like that too because even though, I had a partner at the time and there were 5 children in the house, there wasn't much time alone per se unless the kids were in bed asleep. But even when they were up, I was still rushing off to get 5 minutes alone to use or to have a drink or whatever it is I wanted to do because I didn't do it in front of the children. But even like I just remember, like you were saying, that feeling of loneliness, even sitting with the 5 children and the partner at the time, I still felt alone because I didn't have anyone to talk to, about that deep connection that you have with people today in recovery. I didn't have that. So, you can only have reasonable conversations with kids under the age of 10. It's not like you can have in-depth conversations. So, and my partner at the time was a game player. So he would constantly be on the PlayStations and wouldn't really interact much at all. So it was just me in my own head, which is a really bad place to be when you're in active addiction. So I completely agree with you on that too.
Yeah,
so.
Shared experience for sure. And that's not, that I've never known you in that place. The way that I first sort of met you when I was in very, very early recovery. You've got more time up than me. So I came into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous and I saw this, this person who was incredibly bright and wonderful and talkative and had wonderful things to say when sharing. And, so obviously there's a huge difference from where you were versus where you're at today. Can you talk about what that's like now?
Or what it's like now? Okay. It's very different now. I like being alone. I like having time to myself today. I manage it a lot better. I still am not with that person that I was with in active addiction anymore. Now, I've got 3 kids of my own and I'm with a new partner and our house is a recovery house, as they say. So it's not very quiet at my place, so you don't really get much time to yourself anymore. But the times that I do, I value it greatly because it's very far and few between. Those personal moments that I get to myself, I can sit down and evaluate how I'm feeling, what's going on for the day, what needs to be done for today. I can connect with my higher power and do some prayer and meditation if I need to or if I want to. I can have those phone calls with my sponsor or with sponsees or with friends and bits and pieces like that. So today, the feeling that I have today is I'm not lonely anymore. I don't have that feeling where I sit in a room and I'm not connected with anybody.
Yeah.
anymore. So, the people that I love share my space with me, which is a completely different feeling. Two of the children that I have today were with me back in active addiction, and my relationship with them today is very, very different. Very, very different. I do have that connection, and I am able to have conversations with them around loneliness and the difference between being alone and being lonely. It's, like I said, I don't really experience loneliness much these days at all. And when I do get to be alone, it's really, really nice.
Oh, beautiful. And I mean, there's the amount of connection and clarity that comes with recovery and working a strong program. It just sounds like, you're reaping the benefits of that clarity and that connection with your family and with other people. And then, there's the difference between sort of being alone and loneliness, that there's that nice, that quality of solitude where there's time for reflection and prayer and meditation versus, what I was like anyway, constantly sneaking off to use and be by myself. They couldn't be further apart, really, hey?
Yeah, that's it. It's like complete opposite of the line. Yeah. And it's like you were saying, it's completely amazing, the difference and the transition period on what you go through during that period is just, when you sit back and you look at it and you look back at what it used to be like to what it is today, you couldn't put it into words, the amount of emotions and feelings that you go through and that you experience today on a daily basis. So completely different. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to talk about what you do at Hills and Ranges Private after the break.
You're listening to the Recovery Cast by Hills and Ranges Private. Now playing daily on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. For more shows, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.
All right, you're listening to the Recovery Cast with Oliver and guest Kelly. Now, Kelly, I would like to ask you, what is your role at Hills and Ranges Private?
Okay, so my official role is I'm a support worker. So currently at the moment I work nights and I work sometimes on the weekend. So that's my role, is I'm just there to support the day staff and the facilitators of Hills and Ranges, and also to sit with clients and to engage clients in day-to-day activities and bits and pieces like that. So, yeah.
Oh, it sounds awesome. And the tough question, I guess, I have for all of the staff at Hills and Ranges Private is, what do you get out of your job?
Wow. That's actually a really big question.
Yeah.
So this year, due to coronavirus, I have spent a lot of time at home with kids and doing homeschool and doing school myself. So my recovery, even though I'm still in recovery and I've worked my recovery, it hasn't been as strong as what it normally would be. So what I get out of working at Hills and Ranges now is that I've got that refocus and that passion for recovery back again, because not only do I live in recovery, I work in recovery too. So it has made a really big difference in my life, in my personal recovery, my self-confidence, in all areas, working at Hills and Ranges. So it's huge. I can't even really put into words what I sort of get out of it. It's just so much, and the experience that I get working with people and different people and watching them go through their journey right at the start as well. It just reminds me of my journey. So I suppose if I was to put it into three sort of words, it would be reflection on my own journey, what and where I'd like to be in the future, and just connection not only with my higher power, not only with the workers and the clients, but connection with people in general.
Wow. For me, during the COVID-19 situation, the face-to-face meetings have all but been closed down. And through my work here on the podcast and working in my role as the music therapist at Hills and Ranges Private, I feel that as well, that I do get to connect and talk recovery in a face-to-face situation, which is something that I've been seriously missing over this sort of lockdown that we've experienced. And I do find it it's almost like a win-win situation, because they're helping me. They don't realise it, but they're actually helping me too. And that is, it reminds me of exactly where I was in when I went to rehab, and there was a volunteer that came in to play music, and how that helped me as a musician. It put life back into my soul almost, and I just get to share my experience in my addiction and then my recovery as well, which is, that's part of a strong program, is passing it on, as you know, and as you do, Kelly. It has been great, and I think I totally agree with you. It's so powerful. And the other thing is that I wanted to ask you about, finally, of 3 questions. Can you describe the transformation of one of the, a guest at Hills and Ranges Private from when they come in to what they're like when they leave?
Yeah, it's actually quite amazing to experience, watch and participate in the guest's journey. There's a particular person that I'm thinking about at the moment. I was there on their very first day and they were a mess. They were crying, they were scared, they felt like the lowest of the low because of where their journey had taken them and the things that they'd done and put up with as well, and just to see over the first week, that cloud sort of starting to lift, that fogginess that you have, seeing that sort of starting to lift to, not sleeping properly, to actually having a good night's sleep, to participating in an exercise, sharing stories with me, sharing about their day-to-day stuff at the retreat, those little things. And then towards the end, they leave in the next couple of weeks, just a completely different person. Their skin's clear, they look healthy, they sound so positive, they're just really enjoying and so energetic. Like they're just bouncing everywhere and laughing, giggling, participating in different activities, and listening to them share from when they first come in and they're a nervous wreck and they first share, to actually voicing confidently what's going on for them and what their part is in their behaviour at that time. And also, not only that, admitting when they've done something wrong or when they need to advise me of something rather than just going and doing it. They come and say, "Hey, Cal, I've just got to go do this for a minute." It's massive, the transformation that guests go through in their stay at Hills and Ranges. And, as you would know yourself, what you put into it, you get back tenfold. So it really is a fantastic transition period to be a part of and to experience with them, because it's not only them going through the journey too. You sit down and you impart information and you impart guidance, and, they get stuff out of my story, listening to my story as well. So they grow so much in that time that it really is amazing to see that transformation.
Yeah. And it sounds like, from what you've just explained, that there is this visible transformation between being so, affected by what addiction does to us, and then to the point where you can see them begin to actually make the right choices just simply in the short time that they're there, from what they've learned and the fact that they're beginning to see life in with clarity and make those right decisions and have that emotional growth, even just the beginnings of it, which they then continue with the skills that they learn during their stay.
Very much so. But the physical change is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. It's like, they come in and, like I said, how they have that clouded view. You can see it in their eyes. Like they just feel so lost. And sometimes people, when they come in, they feel that they don't want to be part of the world anymore. And then when they leave, they just can't wait to be part of the world. Wow. So, yeah, just there's so many different factors to it, that they go through, and that we as the work, or myself as a worker, experience watching them. There's just so much, you can't really put it all into words either. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, it's truly beautiful, and I'm really glad that I got you on the show to explain that. So thank you very, very much for coming in to share your experience today, Kel. Cheers.
No worries, Oliver. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And look, to sum up, look, if you or someone you love is suffering from addiction, please visit www.rehab.melbourne, because that experience is available for everyone at Hills and Ranges Private. So I'd really like to thank you personally for listening to the show today, and we're going to cover some more interesting topics in the next few episodes. So I hope you stick around for that. And in the meantime, just have a wonderful day, and we will see you on another episode of the Recovery Cast, proudly brought to you by Hills and Ranges Private. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.